Hey guys, so right now I'm going to tackle one of the questions that I get all the time from everyone from drivers and passengers to friends and family, reporters, and people always want to know what's the difference between Lyft and Uber. So, what I usually tell them is that for me, from personal point of view, I prefer driving for Lyft. Everyone probably knows that by now, but at the same time, I also make more money and I get more requests as an Uber driver. So I want to break down, a little bit more what goes into driving for the two and what I see as some commonalities and some differences. Now, obviously, they both do nearly exactly the same thing, but I really think it comes down to their slogans, right? Now, Lyft's slogan is your friend with a car. Uber is your private driver. And I really feel like that slogan kind of speaks to the differences between the two. So with Lyft, whenever I drive my passengers, they almost always sit up in the front seat. They're friendly and they talk, and I like driving my Lyft passengers better. I like other Lyft drivers. I feel like I get a lot of Lyft drivers as a passenger, or as passengers too, because with Lyft you can actually tell when you have a driver because they'll have a green ivy background. All the drivers have a green ivy background on their profile picture, and since your driver and your passenger account is the same with Lyft, you can actually tell. So that's kind of one of the big things that I think about Lyft. It is more friendly and people are nice. And, I don't know how many Lyft driver or Lyft passengers also take Uber, but I do feel like there is some, oh, I'll only take Lyfts, and Uber passengers say, oh, I only take Uber. But me personally, as a passenger, I prefer both since I also know that a lot of drivers do both. And you don't see a ton of, I don't know. I think Lyft really has not done the best job building their community lately. They had a great thing going with a ton of Lyft drivers who are super devoted to the company. Honestly, a lot of people used to make fun of them for, drinking the pink Kool-Aid. So you guys may have heard that term, but, Lyft had a really good thing going there with themed cars and, like the disco Lyft and hip hop Lyft and all of these cool themed cars, which are still around, but it's just that sense of community. And they would have driver events, and that I thought that was cool because it was like you were working with people, working with your friends, and it didn't seem like it was such a job. And I know that a lot of drivers still feel that way today and still prefer Uber or Lyft over Uber because of that. But at the same time, they're not making. I mean, I haven't found many of any cities where drivers are making more driving primarily for Lyft instead of Uber. Now, Lyft, you can accept tips, which is awesome, and I think it really rewards those drivers who go above and beyond and provide that 5-star level experience every time, do something unique, go out of their way, because you're rewarded with, not only a 5-star, but you're also able to get a tip. Now with Uber, we know their saying or their slogan is everyone's private driver, and it is kind of true. Sometimes I don't quite feel like a slave when I'm driving Uber passengers around, but I always notice that I'm always waiting longer for Uber passengers. And, a lot of this is obviously anecdotal evidence, but when you're doing hundreds of rides and you're talking to other drivers and other passengers even, you kind of start to get that sense, and you can really get a good sense and a good feel for what the differences, are between Uber and Lyft. And I don't think they're as pronounced as some people like to say, but there definitely is a difference. I've noticed, I haven't started tracking. It might be a good idea for me to do, but maybe I'll start tracking, how many minutes it takes for the average Uber passenger to come downstairs and the average minutes it takes for the average Lyft passenger to come downstairs. That would probably be some pretty cool data. And then obviously, with Uber, I would say 80 to 90% of my Uber passengers sit in the back, and which is fine. Honestly, they normally, most of the time, they end up liking me and we end up chatting, and they probably wish they would have sat up in the front, but it's fine. It's not a huge deal. And, you do get the occasional passenger with Uber who's just kind of digging into their phone on, pretending like they're doing work, probably on Facebook or Instagram though. And you definitely get that, but most people warm up to you. And so that's kind of, for me, that's what I see as the biggest differences between the two companies. So if you're already driving or considering driving, these are the things you want to take into consideration. I'd say, especially nowadays, over 50% of drivers are doing both. They're driving for Uber and Lyft. Some are even doing, sidecar, Postmates. So there's a lot of, multiple TNC dipping, you'd call it. So if you're a passenger, you might not even realize that honestly, you're probably getting the same driver, whether it's Lyft or Uber. And, you have 50% chance probably of getting a driver who does both. So the only thing that matters is which app you hail the ride through and how much you're going to pay. So For me as a driver, I do both. So when passengers come into my car, I tell them, hey, just log on to both apps and see which one's cheaper. Take that ride. I don't, you guys are your own independent contractors, right? As Uber and Lyft love to tell us, we're not employees, so you don't need to show loyalty to one or the other. I mean, obviously, if you prefer driving for Lyft and you want to build their fan base, then definitely, try to convince some riders to jump over if you prefer Uber. But if you just want to look out for whatever in the best interest of the passenger, just let them know, hey, just take whatever's cheaper. That's usually what I do. It's also a good way to pass out your referral cards at that point. You say, hey, maybe, Lyft is generally cheaper or whatever, and then you pass out your cards. And, if you're a driver and you're kind of considering both, honestly, I would just pick one, pick Uber or Lyft, whichever you think is going to work well for you in your market. Start doing it, see if you like it. And, maybe it turns out you'll hate driving and you don't like it. So at that point, you don't need to sign up for both apps. But, I always recommend that you at least sign up for Uber and Lyft and even definitely throw Sidecar in there if it's available. You don't necessarily need to drive for all three, but you just want to have those options, have the options to diversify your income. And it's just going to help you be a better business owner and a better driver in general. All right.